I'm going to explain to you why the smaller your wedding, the more difficult it is to find the right wedding photographer. We're just coming to the end of peak wedding season, and it's turned out to be an absolutely crazy summer with fantastic weather since spring. I've shot more weddings this year than I have done in a long time, but the biggest change this year has been the introduction of my highlights film option, which, although that doesn't affect me so much on the wedding day itself, it means another day or two in the edit suite. The feedback from the highlight videos has been fantastic, so this is something I'm really looking forward to developing over the next few years. I have photographed so many fantastic weddings this year, a huge range of enormous weddings and grand hotels to small back garden weddings all over the country. We've had some real technical challenges with really harsh sunlight for most of the weddings and heavy downpours, all of which I'm really accustomed to dealing with. And as we're getting to the end of that peak wedding time, it really feels like we've had a fulfilling and challenging year this year. It's really fantastic to photograph a larger wedding with, say, 150 guests in a big hotel and use the photography and the film to make the most of that setting. But when it comes to those smaller, more intimate weddings, there's a whole different skill set that you have to use as a photographer, and I'm going to talk about that in Lewis and Beth's wedding here. Welcome to the wedding walkthrough of Beth and Lewis's wedding at the Crown Hotel in Harrogate. Both Beth and Lewis were getting ready at the hotel the morning of the wedding, which was good for me because it meant I can just bob between them both and photograph the morning preparations for both of them without needing a second photographer. The aim that I usually set myself for the morning preparations is to capture all the details of the dress, the flowers, the shoes, and the atmosphere and the moments that are happening without interfering at all if possible. And I managed to do that entirely with Beth and Lewis's wedding, just waiting for the right moments when the light's right and Beth's in the right place. So Beth and Lewis got married in Harrogate Registry Office, and although this is one of the prettier ones, registry offices are notoriously difficult to photograph in. They generally have terrible lighting, no windows, and it's quite a challenge. Even though the room is lit with just artificial lighting and the registrars often request that you don't use flash, I was still able to get some lovely shots, some lovely moments of the ceremony, just being careful with my exposures and compositions and just concentrating on capturing the really nice moments of the ceremony. As we came out of the ceremony, it just started to rain, so I had to use this doorway, which was under cover, which was perfect really. Doorways are one of my best friends, especially these kind of covered doorways where the light's blocked from above and that manipulates the light to come from the side or the front. And in this case, we've got two little windows as well, which just make for really, really flattering pictures. And especially if it's raining, we can still get kind of an outside natural light feel whilst keeping Lewis and Beth dry. So as the guests are leaving, I'm just capturing these little moments, these really intimate, special moments between the guests and Beth and Lewis. The bridesmaids hiding under cover, rightly so. And again, this is just one of those opportunities where you can grab kind of a group shot in an informal setting and get a really, really nice natural feel rather than pausing them. So when we got back to the Crown Hotel, Lewis and Beth know a lot of very talented people, and they basically had a jam session for an hour at the hotel, which was one of the best things I've ever seen in a smaller wedding. It can be really tricky to keep the momentum of a wedding day going when you've got kind of 20, 30 guests, but the guests kind of getting up, singing songs and celebrating together just made for a fantastic atmosphere and really brought everybody together. As Lewis and Beth was just sat enjoying the music, there was this fantastic little moment happening where the light was coming from the left in a really, really dark room, creating this really moody, atmospheric kind of portrait shot. I did plan to set this picture up later in the day, but this moment happened naturally, so I kind of prefer to get this rather than getting maybe a more technically perfect version later in the day. For Lewis and Beth, this will be a memory of a genuine moment when the music was in the background and they were just having a moment together, rather than me faking that event later. So before I photograph a venue I've not visited before, I often stalk what other photographers have done at weddings there, which gives me a really good insight into what's available and how I can kind of use those areas. And nobody that I'd found had used this doorway, the kind of the main entrance to the hotel really. And because it was raining, I was in improvisational mode anyway. But this doorway to the hotel turned out to be kind of my favourite spot of the day. For the same reason I've already mentioned, it manipulates the natural light to come from the side, which is much more flattering. And the colours in this doorway were just absolutely beautiful. And although there were guests coming in and out every 30 seconds, we managed to get the shots that we needed. As the rain lightened off a little bit, we managed to get outside the hotel for about 5 minutes. I didn't want to take them too far, and there are some gardens across the road, but that was out of the question really. So we just used the cobbled streets next to the hotel. I decided to kind of leave the people in the background. I could have waited a little bit longer and let the people disappear. But I kind of like capturing the sense that we're in the middle of a busy kind of shopping area, so I left that in. So if you're photographing a larger wedding, kind of 80 to 150 guests, it's quite easy to hide in that group of people. I can move amongst the crowd and get really kind of natural, intimate pictures without people really being aware that they're being photographed or I'm there, and they quickly get used to me just being a part of the day. Now, when it comes to smaller weddings, the opposite applies. There's nowhere to hide. And the first few intimate weddings that I did were a real eye-opener, because you go from being in a crowd of people where nobody's really looking at you to a small group of people where everybody's looking at you all the time. And you quickly realise that the techniques that you use at a larger wedding to get really natural pictures just do not work, because you can't kind of hide amongst the crowd. And as you approach a moment or a group of people, they generally just stop and look at you, which is the last thing that you want. So what I realised quite quickly is you have to have the absolute opposite approach, and you have to be fully a part of that smaller wedding. You have to go to a huge amount of effort to make everybody aware of who you are, how you work, get to know people's names, have a chat with people, and that for me is just as important as the kind of approach photographically that I'm taking on the day. If I manage to make everybody at that wedding feel really comfortable with me being around, they will start to relax, and then I can then get those really natural moments. So if you're having a smaller wedding, it's really important that you consider that the photographer or videographer that you employ is going to fit in with your family and your friends and be able to become a part of your wedding, rather than a supplier that kind of fits on the edge, if that makes sense. It's about finding the right photographer for you, not necessarily who all your friends have used, or the person with the most awards, or the person whose pictures you absolutely love. But if they don't fit in with the feel or the flow of your wedding day, you're both going to find it difficult to work together and to get the shots that you really, really want. So my advice to you would be to make a short list of the photographers that you really love, and then arrange meetings or telephone calls with those photographers and find who kind of gets you the best and who you get on with the best. I'm sure that if you stick to that advice, you will end up with a set of wedding pictures you really, really love for years to come. So that's the end of the video. Thank you for watching. Please do feel free to watch some of the other videos on the blog, and follow me on Instagram if you don't already. That's Mark_Tattersall, and I'll see you again soon.